The craziest torture methods in history. Coming in at number 10 is the brazen bull, a device so brutal it's almost poetic. Invented in ancient Greece, this was essentially a giant bronze bull with a hollow interior. The victim would be locked inside and the fire would be lit underneath. As the metal heated up, the victim would literally roast alive. The bull was designed with a complex system of tubes and pipes that converted the victim's screams into sounds resembling a bull's roar. Legend has it that the inventor, Perillos, was the first to test it out. Spoiler alert, he didn't exactly survive. The brazen bull wasn't just a tool for punishment, it was also a form of entertainment. Public executions were a big deal back then, and the bull's roaring screams added a theatrical element to the whole ordeal. It's like the ancient version of a horror movie, except the screams were 100% real. And if you're wondering how anyone could come up with something so horrifying, well, the ancient Greeks had a flair for the dramatic. The brazen bull is a chilling reminder that when it comes to torture, humans have always been creative. Next up, at number 9 is the rack, a medieval favorite that's basically the opposite of yoga. This device was designed to stretch the victim's body to its absolute limits. The victim would be tied down at the wrists and ankles, and the crank would slowly pull them apart. Joints would dislocate, muscles would tear, and bones would snap. And the worst part? It wasn't always meant to kill you, it was often used to extract confessions, because nothing says "tell the truth" like the sound of your own spine popping. Some versions of the rack also had spikes on the bed, so even if you weren't being stretched, you were still in for a world of pain. Medieval interrogation really didn't mess around. The rack was so effective that it became a staple of medieval torture chambers across Europe. It was often used during the Spanish Inquisition, with the goal wasn't just to punish, but to break the victim's spirit. At number 8 we have the Judas Cradle. Sounds almost cozy, doesn't it? This device was a pyramid-shaped seat, and the victim would be lowered into it, slowly. Let's just say that that sharp tip wasn't exactly designed for comfort. The weight of the victim's body would do the rest, causing unimaginable pain and often severe internal damage. And if that wasn't enough, the torturers would sometimes add weights to the victim's legs to really drive the point home. Literally. The Judas Cradle was particularly popular during the Spanish Inquisition, where it was used to extract confessions from heretics and non-believers. The slow, agonizing process was designed to break the victim's will, and it was often combined with other forms of torture for maximum effect. The name Judas Cradle comes from the idea that it was used to punish traitors, much like Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus. So not only was it physically torturous, but it also carried a heavy symbolic weight. The Judas Cradle serves as a reminder that when it comes to torture, sometimes the simplest devices are the most effective. And by effective, I mean horrifying. Number 7 brings us to the Iron Maiden, a device so iconic, it's practically the mascot of medieval torture. This coffin-shaped contraption was lined with spikes on the inside, and the victim would be placed there, with the door being slowly closed, driving the spikes into their body. But here's the twist, the spikes were strategically placed to avoid vital organs, meaning the victim would bleed out slowly, enduring hours or even days of agony. And just when you thought that it couldn't get worse, some versions of it had spikes on the door that would pierce the eyes. The Iron Maiden has become a symbol of medieval cruelty, and it's been featured in countless movies, books, and even heavy metal album covers. So the next time you see an Iron Maiden in a museum or a movie, just remember, it's not just a spiky coffin, it's a testament to humanity's dark imagination. At number 6 we have the Pear of Anguish. No, it's not a fruit salad ingredient, it's a device that looks like something you'd find in a medieval dentist's office. This pear-shaped instrument would be inserted into the victim's mouth or their chocolate starfish and then expanded using a screw mechanism. The result? Let's just say it wasn't pretty. The device would tear through tissue, dislocate jaws, and cause excruciating pain. The Pear of Anguish was often used as a punishment for crimes like blasphemy, heresy, or adultery. It was designed to cause maximum pain without necessarily killing the victim, making it a favorite among torturers who wanted to send a message. Some versions of the Pear of Anguish also had spikes on the inside, so when it expanded, it would tear through the victim's insides. It's like a medieval version of a Jack-in-the-Box, except instead of a clown, you get unimaginable pain. Number 5 takes us to the Vikings with the Blood Eagle. Now, I know what you're thinking. Vikings? Aren't they just those guys with horned helmets who raid villages? Well, yes, but they also had a flair for the dramatic when it came to torture. The Blood Eagle was as brutal as it sounds. The victim would be tied down and their back would be cut open. The ribs would then be broken and pulled outward to resemble wings, and the lungs would be ripped out and draped over the ribs. The victim was often still alive during this entire process. Imagine your ribs turned into a pair of grotesque wings while you're still breathing. It's like the Vikings watched a horror movie and said, "Meh, hold my mead, we can do much worse." This method wasn't just about killing, it was about sending a message. The Blood Eagle was often reserved for the worst criminals or enemies, and it was seen as a way to honor the gods. The Vikings believed that the victim's suffering would please Odin, the god of war and death. So not only was this torture brutal, but it was also deeply spiritual. At number 4, we have Scaphism, a method so horrifying it's hard to believe it's real. If you've ever thought, what's the worst way to die? Congratulations, you found it. The victim would be placed between two boats or hollowed out tree trunks with their heads, hands and feet exposed. They would then be force-fed milk and honey until they developed severe diarrhea. More honey would then be smeared on their exposed lips to attract insects. Over days, the victim would be eaten alive by bugs while drowning in their own filth. It's like nature's worst buffet, and you're the main course. Scaphism was often used in ancient Persia as a punishment for crimes like treason or murder. This slow, agonizing process was designed to maximize suffering, and it often took days for the victim to die. The victim was often kept alive as long as possible, so they could fully appreciate every moment of their own decomposition. The name Scaphism comes from the Greek word boat, which makes sense given this method. You're in a boat while being eaten alive by bugs and suffocating in your own feces. Number 3 brings us to the Spanish tickler. No, it's not a flamenco dancer. It's a claw-like device used to rip flesh from bone. The victim would be tickled with these sharp claws. Here's a demonstration. The tickling would often cut down to the bone, and if the initial torture didn't kill its victims, the infections that followed surely would. Imagine being clawed at like a piece of meat, your flesh being torn away bit by bit while you scream in agony. It's like Freddy Krueger's favorite tool, but with zero charm and 100% more horror. The Spanish tickler was often used during the Spanish Inquisition, where it was a favorite among torturers. It was designed to cause maximum pain without necessarily killing the victim, making it a popular choice for extracting confessions. The torturers would often use it in combination with other methods just to make sure the victim was thoroughly broken. The Spanish tickler was also sometimes called the cat's paw because of its paw-like design. But let's be honest, this isn't exactly going to go on a Hello Kitty commercial. The Chinese didn't want to be left out from this list, and at number 2 we have Ling Chi, also known as death by 1,000 cuts. Ironically, this method was used in China for over 1,000 years, and it's as brutal as it sounds. The victim would be tied to a post and the executioner would make small, precise cuts all over their body. The goal wasn't just to kill, but to prolong the suffering as much as humanly possible. Imagine being cut over and over again, each incision a little deeper, each moment a little more agonizing. Ling Chi was often used as a punishment for crimes like treason or murder, and it was seen as a way to humiliate the victim. The slow, agonizing process was designed to maximize suffering, and it often took days for the victim to die. The victim was often kept alive as long as possible, so they could fully experience every moment of their own torture. Ling Chi was banned in China in the early 20th century, but it remains a symbol of the country's brutal history. And finally, at number 1, we have the head crusher. You don't really need to be Einstein to figure this one out. This device was exactly what it sounds like. The victim's head would be placed inside a metal helmet and the screw mechanism would slowly crush their skull. Teeth would shatter, eyes would pop out, and the skull would eventually collapse. And just to add insult to injury, some torturers would tap on the helmet with a hammer for fun. It's the ultimate combination of creativity and cruelty, and it earns the top spot on our list. The head crusher was often used during the Spanish Inquisition, where it was a favorite among torturers. It was designed to cause maximum pain without necessarily killing the victim, making it a popular choice for extracting confessions. The head crusher was sometimes called the Spanish spider because of its claw-like design, but let's be honest, there's nothing cute about it. There you have it, the top 10 craziest torture methods in history. If you made it through this video without squirming, congratulations, you're officially a monster. But hey, let me know in the comments which method did you think is the most brutal. And if you enjoyed this dive into the dark side of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you will never miss another video.